On May 25th, 2020, a little over a week ago, a man named George Floyd was murdered by a cop. From my understanding, he was at an ATM and his payment got declined, or his attempt to withdraw a payment got
It's
declined,
already been three
and
months. WTF, Reed.
he was shortly after tackled by a cop. He was apprehended and pinned down by a cop on the curb. The cop put his knee straight on his neck and on his throat. The man couldn't breathe, and he died from asphyxiation momentarily. He was murdered by this cop. He was saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, over and over and over again. Thanks to Tier 1 sub, Stan G, I appreciate it. Now, this is just one incident in what seems to be an abnormal quantity of instances of racism, police-related racism towards the black community here in America. This is coinciding with the Ahmaud Arbery shooting that happened, which we talked about a little while ago, as well as just a shit ton of viral videos just blowing up these last few days, or these last couple of weeks, of racists and racist cops using their power to try and harm black people through the power of the police. A really popular video that went viral a little while ago, like a week ago, was this video of a lady in a park. It was in Central Park, and she didn't have her dog. She was walking her dog, and she didn't have it on the leash. And a black man walked up to her and was like, well, not even like up to her, but was on the sidewalk and was like, hey, you're supposed to have your dog on the leash here. You should probably have your dog on the leash. And Amy Cooper was her name. And shortly after this, the guy started recording because she started having a bit of a mental breakdown in the park and started threatening the man's life. It was quite the display of white privilege, and like the perfect example of white women using their tears to hurt black people. She pulled out her phone and started threatening to call the police, and she said, I am going to call the police and tell them an African-American man is threatening me. Now, not only is this just a blatant lie, I mean, we saw the video, this is just a blatant lie. Literally fucking lying. But a threat to murder this man. This was an attempted homicide by cop. That's what she was trying to do, and she was threatening him, saying, I'm going to call the police and tell them that a black man is threatening my life, and they are going to come here, and they are going to murder you. That was what what she was doing. That was her attempt. And that is probably... You know we're in a bad situation when that is the least problematic instance that happened. Because we also had a bunch of shootings of innocent black people, or at least unarmed black people, occur alongside that, whether it be from police or from white people, white supremacists that didn't face many charges or any charges at all shortly after. So, in light of all of this, protests have been erupting across the country, across the world, actually. I think there's been one in Berlin as well, and there's some in Canada. Every state in the United States, as of now, every state in America has a Black Lives Matter oriented protest happening right now, which is quite amazing. It is pretty cool to see people coming together, even in a time... Now, it isn't fantastic they're doing it during a pandemic when we're all supposed to be social distancing, but, I mean, most of them are wearing masks, so, I mean, I don't think... When something like this is happening, when we have an epidemic... There's two epidemics happening right now. There's an epidemic of the coronavirus, and there's an epidemic of police murdering unarmed black people and getting away with it, more or less. So I can understand them maybe breaking social distancing guidelines to come together like this. You know, it's important. Yeah, Monka wash hands. Wait, what is that emote called? Yeah, Monka wash hands. Yeah. But it does seem like most of the protesters are engaging in mostly safe behavior, right? Like they're on the streets and they're really close to each other, so that sucks. But they're wearing masks. I mean, they should be wearing masks even when there isn't a pandemic, for reasons we'll get into momentarily. But even further, it does seem like they are being responsible with their protesting, considering the circumstances. Now I will admit, I am not fully aware of everything that's happening with these protests. There's so much stuff happening constantly, so much news coming out, and if you know me, you know I try to stray away from covering breaking news on my channel, because I'm not a news channel. I don't cover stuff that's happening as we speak, and try to like give my take on what we currently know. I typically wait for the story to be out, and then I look at the evidence and talk about what we can get out of that from there. Like with the Christchurch shooting, or I should say the that one synagogue shooting that happened, or the El Paso shooting. This was way back when I first started, but you know, those were kind of breaking news when I covered them, but the evidence was mostly out, and I feel it was appropriate for me to cover them. But here, in this scenario, this is unraveling news. The reason I'm covering it is because I feel this is probably worth breaking my rules for, my own rules, of like not covering new like current events unless all the evidence is out there. Not covering current events while they're unfolding, right? The only other time I think I've done this was with the Trump impeachment, right? We covered that a little bit live because it just happened over the course of so many days, so many weeks, you know. But getting back into the protests, the majority of these protests, the vast majority, are peaceful. And the ones there that aren't, where there is rioting and property damage, I have my own opinion on those that I will not espouse on this platform, as I feel YouTube may not be the best place to express them for reasons. But even in the protests that have become violent and where riots have occurred, there seems to be a pattern of a few different things that end up happening. One, it gets violent because the police instigate it. Overwhelmingly, these protests, or these riots, I should say, the ones that end up being violent riots, didn't get violent until other people, whether it be the police or white supremacists, initiated it. Or, as we'll get into a little later, undercover cops. We'll get into that in a little bit. There's a few clips that have been going around that we'll get into later, but just speaking broadly, every instance of violence on the part of the protesters has been from cops or white supremacists. There's been a video going around lately of a bunch of protesters beating a white guy until he's like all contorted and bleeding and looks like his spine is broken on the street. And you've had your, you know, Andy Ngo's and your Ian Miles Chong's and your other fashy types on Twitter, your fake journalists, you know, your fashy, you know, crack journalists or hack journalists, posting those. But when you actually do the research, you find that in Tim Pool, you actually find that that guy had a machete. He had a fucking sword and was running around trying to kill black people. He wasn't guarding his store or his property. He explicitly got a weapon, stood outside of a privately owned corporation store, not even like a mom and pop store, and was out there waiting for someone, ideally I assume a black person, to come try to vandalize it so he had an excuse to try to kill them. The guy has been confirmed to be a white supremacist. There's been another guy standing outside of his truck with a compound bow and arrow, threatening to shoot protesters. He got out of his car, his truck, even though he could have kept driving, to threaten to shoot protesters. And he didn't get attacked until, you know, someone was like, he's threatening to shoot one of us, someone knocked this fucker out, someone knocked the fucker out, and then he went on Fox News and started whining about how he was just, you know, an innocent guy, he was unarmed, and he got attacked by protesters. You know, of course you have, you know, Fox News. Yeah, knock that fucker out. You have Fox News platforming this. What other instances happened where they were instigated first? The lady in the wheelchair. There was a video of a lady in like a wheelchair kind of thing, and she, it was framed as being like an old lady being attacked by protesters. In reality, it was a 30-year-old woman who could walk, who had a knife, and was going around stabbing people, shanking them. But the only video you see going around is of of the protesters, shaking her up a bit, So yeah, it was a knife Karen, stabby Karen. So yeah, basically every instance that we've seen of violence occurring has been started by the police or by Mobility Mary, that's what we'll call her, of outside, people, like anti-protesters, people who are like white supremacists or pro-cop or just anti-protester in general. Now, I will acknowledge the elephant in the room, the looting of that one target. I have my own opinions on on the looting of that target and the burning of the police precincts that I will not espouse on my YouTube channel, as I don't feel it is best for the longevity of my online career. My nose is very itchy right now. Can we please not? Holy shit, it's so itchy. What the fuck? Streamer nose itch. Regardless, though, there's been countless instances of of protesters, or I should say, it's usually like a white dude who looks like he's probably a Nazi pretending to be a protester. I actually saw this video this morning. This white kid had a skateboard, and he started breaking the window of the of a store that all the protesters were walking past, and a bunch of black guys come along and take the skateboard from him and say "fuck off," get out of here, right? It seems to be oh, and there's also been instances of oh god, these are so crazy. The cops aren't even trying to hide it anymore. Uniformed cops, not even undercover cops. These are guys fully in uniform, destroying their own vehicles and destroying private property on video. The first one that came out was of a bunch of cops in front of a line of protesters smashing cars, like police cars. There was another example that came out earlier today of armed police at a protest destroying a jewelry store. They aren't even hiding it anymore because they know they can get away with it. They know, and we'll get into why later. There's been videos of the police just charging into protest lines. Peaceful protests. Just standing there peacefully protesting. One guy insults a cop. The entire line of cops rolls in as though they just got an order on their little, their little Bluetooth ear speakers. Running in, pepper spraying protesters, beating them, pulling them into the police crowd, and then beating them and arresting them, pulling people out of the crowd. Yeah. And these instances have been coming up a lot. Now, I can't speak of the truthfulness of all these instances, and we'll get into why in a little bit, because I plan on splitting this stream up into 3 videos, sort of a 3-parter. But this is something that's happening, and I want to talk about what you can do if you're a protester, or you're someone who wants to protest, and you're worried about the cops. Because I've been doing a little bit of research, finding out different ways that you can, different precautions you can take, and different actions you could potentially take in Minecraft if you wanted to perhaps protect yourself from the police during these protests. Let's go through them, at least the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Do not wear contacts is a big one. The gas that they are using melts contact lenses onto your eye, and you will lose your eyes forever. You will lose your eyes if you wear contacts, and you get tear gas into your eyes. The gas that the police are using, and they're using them on peaceful protesters. Do not wear contacts if you go to a protest. Wear glasses, or ideally prescription goggles. What I would recommend, I was on the swim team when I was in high school. This won't work 100%, but you can get watertight goggles that are prescription, that'll protect your eyes from a lot of things, whether it be, flying projectiles, a fair amount of tear gas, so they're meant to get in through things like that, and still be able to give you the ability to see. But do not wear contacts no matter what. I would recommend prescription goggles if you can get your hands on them. What about police with riot shields? riot helmets, and as we now know, Trump is rolling out the military vehicles. Well, let's say in Minecraft, hypothetically, you were in Minecraft, and you modded Minecraft to have police and military with riot gear, walking down the streets of the Minecraft villages, right? So let's say in Minecraft, theoretically, you were able to mod in oil-based paint in Minecraft. And let's say in Minecraft you were willing to, or you were able to fill these oil-based paint into water balloons or empty beer bottles with rocks in them. And you were to splash them or hit these in-game in Minecraft Riot Police on their gear with this oil-based paint. As it turns out, the police cannot see in Minecraft through the paint on their helmets, on their riot shields, on their gear as it gets slippery in Minecraft, and are forced to take off their gear and switch it out, and or just continue being, doing what they're doing, but not being at their best, not being able to see very well. Oil-based paint in Minecraft. Same goes for military vehicles, as it turns out, in Minecraft. If you were to throw paint or glue, Elmer's glue in Minecraft, onto the windshields of military and police vehicles, they are forced to stop the vehicles and get out. They cannot function in Minecraft if you obscure their vision with paint and glue and whatnot. Yeah, with Minecraft, splash potions in Minecraft, of course, that's what we're talking about here. So there's that. But what are these riot police? Now let's stop talking about Minecraft and let's start talking about real life. What methods have these riot police, or these police in general, been using to silence protesters and try to harm protesters? Well, charging in with pepper spray and with tear gas and, just beating the fuck out of protesters. I mean, we've known that's been a thing, right? That's no surprise. So what can you do against that? Oh, and of course rubber bullets and flash grenades. They aren't technically flash grenades, they're actually these little grenades that explode, shoot out a bunch of little rubber balls that hurt like fuck when they hit you, and then expel a bunch of tear gas. But they, they're, in all intents and purposes, flash grenades. Like flashbangs. So what can you do against these things? Well, wearing protective clothing is pretty big. Helmets are important. Wear a helmet. Cover your face, because the police and the president has authorized the DEA to investigate protesters. They will arrest protesters. If you get arrested and you're in a cop car in Minecraft, you can also piss in the cop car. You may get in trouble for it, but they are forced to decommission said cop car for a number of hours for it to be disinfected. They have to, because it becomes a biohazard if you piss in the cop car in Minecraft. At least from what I've heard. Don't go out to protest if someone in your house is immunocompromised. Yes, do not do this. If someone within your household is immunocompromised, do not go out and protest. Do not risk getting them, sick. God, the fucking streamer nose itch is going off today. They really don't want me to fucking do this video, huh? What else? What else did I want to talk about? Rubber bullets have been being used. Now, these rubber and foam rounds are supposed to be used. They were invented to be used to be shot at the ground so that they would lose velocity and bounce off the ground at like the legs and the feet of protesters and sort of like cull them off. But our police are legitimately just like shooting them at the faces of protesters. Like there's been people who've lost eyeballs. Like there's this guy who got shot in the eye with a rubber bullet and he's lost his eye. Police have been shooting protesters at point blank range in the head with gas canisters. I mean, we've all seen the videos from the Hong Kong protests of, on Live Leak, of the guys on the ground dead with their brains splattered all over the floor with a gas canister lodged in their brain, right? Like, we've all seen those videos on Live Leak and on Twitter and stuff like that. We've all seen it. Yet people have gotten shot in the face with rubber bullets and they've died. It hasn't been great. The police have been just killing protesters. Peaceful. You haven't seen those? Oh, you should look them up if you want to be, angry. It's funny too because we were all acting all high and mighty a few months ago, being like, "Huh, at least we're not doing what China is to Hong Kong," and it's like, "Ooh, yeah, no, we literally are on an even bigger scale." So that's nice. Hanky's blown the fuck out. Now they have to defend the actions of the United States police if they're going to defend the actions of the Chinese police. Yeah. So this is where we're at. The police are also deploying planes that are using GPS to pick up the data off of the phones of protesters, and they're getting people's identities through that. And then the DEA is investigating them later. So do not bring your phones, planes and helicopters as well, yeah. They've been having helicopters hover over. Do not bring your phone. Do not bring your phone. They're getting your information off of your phone, and they're finding out your identity from there. Even further, use umbrellas for drones. The police are using drones, and the military is using helicopters. You can use umbrellas. You should be covering your face. Do not bring any phones or electronic devices that could, like, give away... thanks for $5, Uwu. That could give away your identity. Just don't bring that shit with you. And if you do want to bring some type of get a burner. Yeah, actually no, that's good. Get a burner phone if you can to record the police. Always be recording the police on a burner phone. If you cannot afford a burner phone, do not bring one. Do not jeopardize your safety. And record the police. Record the pigs doing whatever they're fucking doing. Whether they be destroying their own equipment to make protesters look bad, beating up protesters, initiating violence. Do that. What else can you do? Now, I've seen a lot of debate online, and I'm not sure what the consensus is on this. A lot of debate online on whether or not you should be using yogurt and milk to break up the capsaicin and the spicy shit, because most spicy shit is fat soluble rather than water soluble. Milk and whatnot to break up the pepper spray in your eyes. Now, I've heard that you should use water because it's a universal solvent, though it's not as effective because it doesn't harm your eyes as much. And milk, while it does more effectively break down the pepper spray, is an irritant. There's been a lot of back and forth here. Now, the go-to ideal thing seems to be cold water diluted with baby shampoo. No Tears baby shampoo seems to be the go-to right now. Seems to be like the consensus of what you should be doing. Very, very diluted baby shampoo with cold water. Because the baby shampoo won't harm your eyes too much. It's No Tears for a reason. And it tends to have a better effect at breaking it down. Do not use milk if you can help it. And try to prefer cold water or baby shampoo. Do not just use soap like Baked Alaska. Do not just use soap. No Tears baby shampoo, highly, highly diluted. With cold water if you can help it. Also, if you're at protests, there are people that are handing out water and food for people, and police are destroying them. There's been videos of police using their knives to destroy like piles of gallons of water and like water bottles that people have been handing out to protesters. You have to protect those. Move them if you can, because the police have been destroying the water supplies and food. Why? Well, because the police are pieces of shit and they don't want these protests happening. So yes, protect the water, their supply of water. Also, there's a few things to keep an eye out for. There are a lot of undercover cops among the ranks of the protesters, and they are overwhelmingly the ones that start the violence from the protesters' sides. If there's a white guy, say, wearing a white armband, or any type of clothing that seems like it would be used to signal to police that they aren't another protester, that are starting some sort of violence, maybe trying to break a window, getting people to like grab some bricks out of the ground and start throwing them at people or throwing them into windows and stuff like that. Don't listen to them, call them out, because they're overwhelmingly going to be cops. They're more than likely cops trying to instigate violence, so their coworkers can come in and start initiating violence, and it not look too bad in terms of optics for the police. They use different colors in different areas. It's not always going to be a white armband, but keep an eye out, right? Because what they'll do is, you got the cops will be like, hey, dress up in some civilian clothing, dress up like a protester, but wear something that lets us know you're one of us, so we don't end up breaking your rib cage in whenever we start charging the protesters. Keep an eye out for things like that. White dudes, they're usually going to be white, with some kind of colored armband, or something that just doesn't look right. Something that doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. Call them out. Don't listen to them if they're trying to instigate violence on the protesters' end. Check their shoes, that's true. You can check their shoes as well. There's a lot more research you can do on this. I definitely recommend you look more into it. Yeah. I guess that's all I have to say about this particular topic. This is why the protests are happening. This is what you can do to protect yourself from the police. Oh, final thing that we'll wrap this segment up on. The police have been using a tactic of corralling protesters into corners, into dead ends, so they can more easily beat them into submission and arrest them. Do not go where the police try to corral you. Don't run into the, wall of armored police and get your neck broken and get murdered and arrested. But if you notice the police are trying to corral people by, shooting at them and, tear gassing them into a very particular area or corralling them around in a certain direction, do not go in that direction. Wherever you can, get the fuck out of there. Get away from the police. They're trying to corral you into a place where they can start beating and arresting as many protesters as they can. Doesn't matter if it's a peaceful protest or not, it's what they're trying to do. They've also been luring them in. Police will kneel down as though they're in solidarity, and then as soon as you get close, or as soon as they pull you in to come kneel with them, they get right up and they start shooting at the protesters, shooting them in the face with rubber bullets and shooting them with gas canisters and pepper spraying them and pinning them and beating them. So be very careful there as well. Do not fall for their tricks. Do not help the police. Don't try to be like one of the good protesters that buys a bunch of cops like a pack of water or a 6-pack of beer. Don't be one of those people. I've seen that on TikTok and shit like that. Don't be one of those people. Don't do that shit. You're way more likely going to get tackled or pepper sprayed for doing it than you are going to get on their good graces and now they aren't going to charge the rest of the protest 10 minutes later. Don't be a fucking bootlicker. Don't be a fucking bootlicker. But, yeah. That's all I have to say in regards to that. Hopefully you learned some stuff from this particular video, and if you are out there protesting, be safe. Be safe.